Hello there, friends. I'm Dana, otherwise known as Dana Spirit Butterfly, offering an energy forecast for this next moon cycle, which begins on the 8th of May and continues until the 6th of June, starting with a new moon in Taurus, an earth sign, and ending in a new moon in Gemini, which is an air sign. In the full moon apex on the 26th of May, we are heading into a full moon in Sagittarius. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but before I go any further with this particular video, I want to acknowledge that I'm on Boonwurrung land today, otherwise known as Melbourne, Victoria, at least one side of the Yarra. And I'm not today in Bunjong land, which is where my home is. I'm currently traveling. And as I travel, there's a certain availability for my services, not just online, but also in person here in Melbourne, if that interests you. And if you'd like to know more about that, you can, of course, check out my website, which is www.danaspiritbutterfly, D-A-N-A, spiritbutterfly.com, or you can contact me or read the notes attached to this video. But for now, of course, an energy forecast really is just talking about energy matters, because energy does matter. Energy, when we talk about energy, it's an encouragement to understand that all things are composed of energy, even the physical, but there's also things that exist beyond the physical, the emotional, the mental, the spiritual, that make up the fabric of our relating and reality. And as I land on relating and reality, it's a commentary here on understanding that it's not just us in meat suits walking around with other meat suits without some intrinsic connection on an energetic level to other things, places, or circumstances. We don't just exist in bubbles without contact with other beings, which is why relations and relationship is a very important part of every spiritual dialogue. Understanding where you situate yourself in place and time is important anyway, but especially true when we're transiting through a new moon in Taurus, which often talks about self and home. It often talks about being grounded and connected to that which is here now. It talks very much about orientating yourself around the things that matter to you, the physical things that are around you that you can touch and that you can feel and that you can sense and that belong to you. And I land on belonging, and the dialogues relating to belonging are often lifelong storylines that we all need to address in our own energetic system, meaning that you'll have thoughts about where you fit and where you don't fit. You'll have feeling senses or where things feel easeful and seem to meet you, where the people around you seem to understand you, or contrastly, so many of us, and I speak as a past life witch, I speak as someone who has intrinsically inherited a certain karmic or energetic experience here in this life, where I've journeyed quite a lot with where I belong or where I don't belong, and experienced quite a lot of distress in my own early childhood experience around feeling unsafe in relationships and feeling like there was no space for me. And this, as I land on that, of course, is a sacred feminine dialogue. And as I say that, I know I feel a sense of the deeper earth, the deeper connection through womb and the portals that give birth to us, that allow us to be here now in this particular time space continuum in the guise of your identity or my identity, where we actually have a sense of self that belongs not just to you, but also to your spirit lineage and your blood ancestry. And when we talk about these particular things, there is a lot of people who feel quite strong resistances towards particular family members or individuals who may have in the past treated you with some level of disdain or disrespect, whether they meant it or not. That may be how you feel. And where you've had that experience, it will stimulate within your own energy system a distrust for belonging, a distrust of feeling safe in your relationships. And Spirit is asking me just to journey a little bit deeper into the intrinsic knowingness that I have around certain aspects of relating. And I'm talking about romantic paradigms, where I know through personal experience and also through reading for others that the romantic paradigms that we're often educated in as children is not often supported as you evolve into adulthood and subsequently into your 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s. Indeed, we are, as creatures that need relationships, also creatures that evolve in relationships to create new paradigms in relationships. Yet, because we have a society that deeply drives connection through the lens of what we expect, what we believe is true based on what we've been told is supposed to happen, often we feel a sense of missing out in relationships. This might look like you noticing that the relationship that you have, the love connections that you have, maybe not quite meeting you, or somehow there's all these things that they do that just seems to rub salt in your old wounds. Or it might mean that you are unlucky in love and that you're still feeling a little bit unsafe in the masculine, feminine, whatever it is your perspective is romantically paradigm. And that, with that, is the deeper lesson. Is the deeper, respectful dialogue that needs to come from within to appreciate that relationships actually are a paradigm of nuance. They're not an expectation matrix, meaning that you can't just receive a relationship to meet you without there being some communication and some dropping in together to have a conversation around desires, around what it is that you see for yourself as being important, and having a dialogue, ideally a rich one that involves a lot of nuance and a lot of space for individuality. And Spirit is reminding me that the best relationships balance up quite nicely, holding that tension quite nicely between independence and sacred voice of self and an ability to be in a collective or a community field, whether that is just you and a sacred other, or whether or not that is you in a bigger community group. At the moment, and for the purposes of this video, it doesn't matter what your dialogue is romantically. It doesn't really matter what it is that you have to share in reference to love. But what really does matter is that you have an awareness of what your dialogue is so that you can hold yourself accountable to some intrinsic self-respect and personal intrinsic balance. And what that means is that you have a greater gift of presence in your body and a greater availability to be able to express yourself. Yes, even those aspects of you that you would consider a little bit vulnerable and perhaps a little bit raw, that you would have some space to be able to dialogue some of that more fully with a sacred other. And Spirit is reminding me that sometimes it is not possible because of practical reasons for you to be able to sit opposite one sacred other and to have that conversation. The beautiful thing about the world at the moment and our evolutionary journey as a collective is that we are a lot better educated around ability to communicate with others, to express our deeper truths, and to be in full ownership of what belongs to us so that we can know the difference between projection and landing all of my elusive reality onto someone else's field and impressing that upon them so that they move in reference to us rather than us sharing a sacred space that is co-created. And most often that co-created availability is simply not there. And Spirit's reminding me that as we move into the full moon of Sagittarius, which Sagittarius, they're very outgoing energetics. They're the types, being fire signs, that are driven very much by passion. But Sagittarius can often come across as a bit of an ungrounded energetic. And of course, during a full moon, the kinetic energy is quite high. So the available resource of light frequency in your field can make it possible for you to have deeply pleasant, very highly passionate experiences with sacred others or others. But if you don't have some form of practice to own your own body, to know where your bits and pieces lie, so where your arms and where your chest and where your womb and where your feet and where all of those bits and pieces sit and lay and what their sensory conversations are, then you may find that the full moon will not feel as pleasant. And in fact, it might be slightly irritating and possibly quite triggering. Now, these energy forecasts aren't about irritating you or creating a potential for trigger. It's not about landing in anxiety here and hearing this potential future that, the psychic told me this, therefore this is what's going to happen. This is more so that you have the opportunity to listen, to feel sense, and know that there are a lot more dialogues going on than might be obvious. The illusion that is our mind likes to tell us things about things that keep us trapped in cycles belonging to the past. It is purposefully designed evolutionarily to keep us safe. And yet, it does the opposite. By trying to keep us safe, it often stimulates cycles of anxiety that keep you avoiding life. And life is something that is designed to be digested. It's something that is not supposed to be just consumed and popped out of, the other end of your digestive tract. It's actually designed to be digested, meaning that there should be some things in your life that aren't quite right. There should be some things in your life that feel a little bit edgy, a little bit fragile, a little bit sensitive. And those sensitivities could be your greatest gifts if you place them in a pocket that basically says that this is my design, this is where I lay today, and it's okay for me to feel sensitive. The sensitivity is not a marker of your damage or your destruction or your ability to act out and to try to garner attention from people unhelpfully. Those sensitivities are there to help you better understand where your potency lies. A responsible human understands that they are in dialogue with a greater consciousness. Let's call it our environment. But so too are we also in concert with our environment because we are in it. We are not separated from it. We are, by definition, by being physically in it, a part of it. And so too with our communities, and so too with our relationships. If you are in a relationship at the moment and you're feeling dissatisfied, it is time for you to acknowledge how you're participating in it. Are you participating in it, or are you objectively abstaining from any responsibility or conversation that needs to be had? It's okay if that happens, because sometimes we don't have the personal skill set to be able to communicate in a way that feels safe. But this should be a calling to go and learn a little bit more about how to communicate. There are a lot of courses out there. I don't offer these types of authentic relating style courses. I have 1,000,001 people who I'd very happily direct to some particular practitioners that I recommend. You're welcome to ask me about them if you'd like. But of course, what I offer myself is psychic awareness, which psychic, psyche, the two are related. That we have a psyche, an aspect of us that perceives the self, actually is how we have psychic energy and availability. The two in consciousness weave. And so if you have a psyche, you are psychic. It's just that most people misunderstand what psychic is and confuse it simply with future prediction. And yet, psychic energy impacts us all the time, and our failure to acknowledge it actually leaves us feeling hollow and dissatisfied with life. And so if you'd like to learn a little bit more about that, then you can check out some of my psychic development work at the moment that I'm offering. Have an in-person course coming up on the 1st of June at Byron Community College, Mullumbimby campus. And so if you'd like to read more about that, you can either go to Byron Community College's website or my own. You can read about the notes. Otherwise, I do have a whole lot of courses beginning to be unraveled on Patreon. And I chose Patreon after a number of years of kind of figuring out how to get my work out there, trying to support people to support themselves by helping them to reach and experience some of this conversation around psychic dialogue. And at the moment, my offerings are on Patreon. And so if you'd like to look up that, patreon.com/Dana Spirit Butterfly is where I have more information around that including access to understandings around moon cycles and how our cyclic nature can impact us. And indeed, we can use rituals to harness the energetic expression of the kinetic energy through the dark moon, new moon, full moon periods to be able to support ourselves a little bit better at the level of the psyche, and thus become a little bit more attuned to a masculine and feminine balanced nature, otherwise known as the integrated form. So again, if you're curious about that, www.dana Spirit Butterfly, that's DANA spiritbutterfly.com.au. And this has been a video channeled not just from me, but also the Great Spirit, the consciousness that journeys with me omnipresently and also in connection with the land grid here, Boonwurrung land. I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to be back here. I loved living in Melbourne for a decade, and I'm here to visit to be of service. Of course, always of service, and also visit family and friends. So much love. Spirit is saying, I'll be back in the Northern Rivers at the beginning of June. So if you like a session in Mullumbimby, hands-on in person, then Monday afternoons at the Healing Temple. I have availability then. Okay. Much love. Until next time. See you guys. Bye.